Thank you very much, Marcus, and hi everybody. So I'm currently working with Marcus, bringing more consciousness in business to focus on other things that higher and more money and just capitalism. And on the other hand, I'm working as an executive search consultant and kind of right hand of guitar. I work with FORMWELT Institute and in organization of these conferences. Thank you very much. So Ulrike, you already said a few words, but say a few more of your person, please.
Yeah, I'm actually not only working on female subjects. I am a strong female. That's why my voice is heard, and I shout out a lot in different areas of my interest. In the years when I had a small child, I was also very engaged in children's initiatives, and I was pushing leaders of the society and of the industry to do more for poor children, for instance, and of course also worldwide organizations, but also in Germany we have big problems here. We have everything. I think every third child is in poverty nowadays in Germany. So sometimes, of course, we also have to ask the question, or I ask the question, why don't we care for our own children and care more for other countries and whatever? That is a big issue from my side of my point of the view in the whole. And I've been in industry now over 25 years in leading positions in all kinds of areas, at the beginning in agencies, also in industry, in consultancy business, employer branding, and so on. And now my name is Generational Ambassador, because I'm now doing the end, or the last part of my business life now is now caring for all generations. Thank you that I'm part of this journey, and I hope to be inspired more. Thank you.
Then I see somebody with the name of Dixon, and I'm not sure if you can hear us or see us. Are you there, Dixon? Not really.
Oh, yes, I am. So good evening. Yeah, my name is Dixon, and I gave a keynote speech the other day about mass migration, and I also work with women. And so I'm really excited to join this breakout session, because there are a few things that I expect perhaps to hear. First, Yonah, you spoke about the men, when they are involved in innovation. Oftentimes they tend to look at the dollar, it's money. But then, according to you, you've seen when men are involved, they tend to even promote research, which in essence helps to keep innovation alive. So I was wondering, especially this is for Sunny. Oh, you're there. Now, you see, I work with women who are very much behind, and I was amazed by one of the women. So oftentimes we think technology is really about people who are ahead, people who know how to use gadgets. But I think technology is really about finding solution to problems. And I'm saying this because one woman came and asked me, because we are dealing with cash money on the table. We call it table banking. So you find women, they are on they bring money, and then it's actually they borrow from that pool, and it's a lot of money. So I, of course, have had this in May of how to go cashless, but it's never occurred to me that a person who has very little knowledge on technology can actually ask, how can technology help us deal with this? So even people who are not knowledgeable in technology, they still this belief that technology can help solve problems. So Sunny, I don't know, when we talk about innovation, we see Wall Street, we see, this is the picture we see. I don't know, are you beginning to see the picture in which, you speak of zero exclusion, yeah? But when I look at these women, I wouldn't really be missing the mark if I said they're excluded. But what stands between them and the innovation is who they are, where they are. So my question is, what are you doing to try and, because poverty is one of those things, it's not that they don't like technology, but then they have these hurdles that they cannot be able to climb. So in your spirit, where you want zero exclusion, what are you doing about this? How would you answer that woman who asks, can technology help us go cashless? So I think these are some of and Yonah, I would really want maybe hear more about the men, because it's true, men look at money, but I don't want to be that man, because if I just look at what I get from what I do, then I miss the big picture of helping others. And I think this conference is really about bringing people together, trying to see how we can actually support each other to connect. So I would want to hear more about that. I'm very much interested because how did you know that people, men, especially those in innovation, that they basically pursue money? I would want to hear more. So yes, Barbara, that's my position, and I look forward to hearing more from the rest. And I thank you, Barbara, and Marcus. I think we've met with Marcus.
Last week.
Yes, so thank you guys for the support. I'm not sure about Yonah. Did we meet Yonah last week?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
It was another panel, Yonah was already.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dixon. So these were very concrete questions for Sunny and for Yonah to answer. And I would really just love to hand on to you.
Thank you, Barbara. Dixon, I love your question, and I also appreciate your contribution on migration, which is also a topic close to my heart. Speaking of Born Global, I felt like if I may touch on that, there's so many misunderstanding, which also goes to your questions. Like when people look at migration, they just see this crowd of faceless people. Essentially, there's from a social psychology perspective, there's a lack of intergroup understanding. Like when people see an outgroup, they don't think in the individual level. They just think this abstract, concept of strangers. But if we look at individuals in migration, they're just humans like us. They contribute to the society. They bring up tons of unique perspectives and innovation, and essentially they can be a positive force. So I felt like at the end of the day, it's human, which goes back to your questions. Let me start with a few misunderstandings in general, and then we'll get on the specific questions. Number one, I feel like right now there's a confusion between innovation and technology. When people talk about innovation, we just assume it's about artificial intelligence, about machine learning. A lot of speaking events that I participate, when people talk about AI, they're still talking about either the algorithm or the hardware, but we really need to understand it's about the humanity. Like whenever we talk about innovation, you have to connect in technology with the humanity in order to convert the technology into value. So that's number one. Number two, another misconception is people feel like profit and impact, or say purpose, are usually opposite. Like when we're talking about doing good, we are almost sacrificing or not generating profit. And we're generating profit, we're not doing good, we're just being evil. I think that needs an update too in terms of the mentality, because research in business literature has proven again and again social responsibility and all the doing good and making money are not contradictory. And that's why when we talk about the kind of business we are building, it's not just unicorns. We're building zebra companies. I don't know if you're familiar with zebra companies, zebra startups. It's a concept where it can be both black and white. You can build companies that is generating profit and revenue, as well as making impact, being purposeful, mission driven. And that's so-called social enterprise, right? So I felt like, people need to understand when we're talking about being good, involving women, helping the underserved community, it's not just a charity. It's not at all. It is actually sustainable business where we're making impact while also making profit. So, I felt like there's that kind of mentality when people think about impact investment. It's about sacrificing. No, if you look at impact investment, the bar is actually higher in terms of the financial analysis, return. So I hope with time, people are going to see this more and more. By the way, there's a professor at London Business School called Adam, what's his last name? He has this new book called Grow the Pie. It's basically to show, okay, if you're growing a bigger pie, everybody's getting more, and you can actually generate profit while making impact. So there's a lot of scientific evidence about that. It's just a matter of educating the crowd, educating the business executives so that they can update their learning, which is another tricky part. Unlearn is actually harder than learning, just because over the past decades, we assume, right, doing good is about charity work. It's about making sacrifices, that it takes time for them to unlearn the old stereotypes and update the new business research finding. The next one is really about now that we're talking about learning, I felt like access, Dixon, and when we talk about bring these to all, and also I love your comment about poverty. It's the number one UN SDG goals, right? Out of the 17 goals, like, if we don't address this, how are we going to address education and health and all those other environment issues, which also makes me mad whenever these world leaders get together. They're criticizing all these developing countries for the carbon emission, but they're actually solving poverty still. But we should also define poverty beyond monetary evaluations. I felt like one thing is about mentality, like, going back to education. They may have the dollars, but do they have the knowledge and the skill set? So there's good news and bad news, Dixon. I also wanted to share, some research findings from a global marketing perspective, because that's an area I've been focused on. The good news is we're actually seeing a higher rate of technology adoption in less developed areas. In other words, if you're comparing with the United States, and that goes to our friend, I don't want to say your name. The earlier comment, she's not here anymore. Earlier comment about Germany is being behind in terms of, a lot of elements, because it's really not just a matter of looking at GDP and all that. So what's happening right now is a lot of developing countries, because historically they were behind in terms of technology adoption, their resistance is actually less. Like, you're actually seeing cashless payments being adopted in countries like Turkey and China and Africa, like areas like Indonesia. Like, essentially the adoption is actually much faster than developed countries like United States, because here people are so used to using credit card that everybody's still carrying a wallet with a bunch of cards. It's almost, this is just not myself, every summer before COVID, visiting, other countries and coming back feeling like, oh my goodness, we're so behind. It's validated by a student of mine whose father just visited him from Turkey and say, oh my goodness, US is so behind in terms of all these financial technology like cashless payment, because people are still carrying a bunch of cards. Like even when Apple Pay, for example, and other wireless payment has been available for years, the adoption is much slower, Dixon. So there's actually positive light that I believe when you see the disadvantage of the, communities that hasn't been advancing, I actually see a lot of hope and a lot of possibility in terms of introducing new technology to this crowd, because they're more open. They're less occupied with their previous technology. They're actually very open to something new. And I'm hoping also, as as our researchers and especially entrepreneurs, finding ways to translate the seemingly complex technology to make it more accessible. Like AI, for example, we don't need everybody to understand the algorithm. It's just like internet, it's just like electricity. It's actually everywhere. If we can make it more accessible and doesn't require, a lot of financial literacy or digital literacy, I actually see a lot of hope, Dixon. So, that's the other thing, right? When we're inventing airplane, we're also inventing airplane crashes, unfortunately, right? Same thing with a lot of ethics discussion. I think Yonah is probably going to touch on more. But then that, if you flip it, the less advanced areas and the underserved communities, they might actually surprise the rest of the world in terms of what are the possibilities. So I'm actually very excited. I also, wanted to take this opportunity to address some of the earlier comments. In my research during COVID about digital divide, it was to my surprise that I discovered that countries like Germany weren't able to fully engage students in remote learning because of the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure. So in other words, when we're looking at the world, we have to redefine, and that's honestly why we think about Born Global in terms of, we're all world citizens. It's not about like where you come from. It's about accessibility. It's also not about citizenship or a geographical or nationality. It's actually, it's an economic term. If you guys understand the simulation, it's about local versus global, in terms of mentality, in terms of access, in terms of equity, whether we're men or women, whether we're, born in developed or less developed countries, we're all globally accessible to anything that's out there. So that's the deeper spirit beyond the immigrant and international, which might be the first layer. So in other words, when we were doing our research, and by the way, one of our portfolio companies are bringing learning management system in rural India, for example, just to make sure, nobody's left behind. And we plan to bring it to Africa and other developing areas. So we're actually excited, Dixon. The bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. And in the spirit of Zebra startups, Zebra companies, we believe by addressing these social issues, we can actually, bring the kind of profit and the revenue which would in turn drive the societal changes. So I hope this answers some of your questions, and I'll leave the rest to Yonah, who always have amazing insights to share. Thank you, Dixon.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. You're just an energy booster, Sonny, and really using your superpower. That's so amazing. The one that you were explaining in the keynote. Yes, please, I hand over to Yonah.
Yes, I would love to connect all of the dots, the question of Dixon about man, about the technology, about women at the same time. On one hand, I'm not really experienced in man because 90% of my team members are women, specifically, mostly from emerging countries. But I'm an Eastern person. I'm come from the Soviet Union. Most of my roots coming from the pretty orthodoxal type of a mindset. So when I explored the Western world, for me, it was a very infantile in terms of how the problems are defined. And it's actually the roots of a topic we're trying to discuss, how we came up with the right question, with the right problem. In MIT, we typically learned never try to solve a problem which doesn't exist. But actually, in venture capital, most of the time, you're trying to solve something which doesn't exist because you're able to put the money into the marketing and sell the idea of the problem. Which is why, for instance, we have unicorns like Facebook, which actually position themselves as a social network, but now they believe they're advertising company. So we actually put the billions in the concept which doesn't exist anymore because investors just use this money in order to monetize it numerous times, with how venture capital works. And unfortunately, it become part of a huge, some kind of a post-colonial model we see around the world. I work as an evaluator in many ecosystems, like 500 startups. So what they do and how we try to use the term is a technology in order to actually stop the innovation. They pick the portfolio of startups we have in the United States and just trying to copy paste it in different countries. So, for instance, we come to the Middle East or Africa and say, now we need to create Uber, Airbnb for Africa. Maybe people would love to create something else, but they don't care. They will only invest in this type of ideas because it's easier to sell it, even if it's not a problem for this region, or it's not something coming from the bottom. It's how they sell this portfolio in different parts of the world. But more importantly, in order to even more to secure their risks, they pay less. I mean, I work in Vietnam. One of my best friends coming from Vietnam, and most of the people in 500 startups believe it's underdeveloped country, but she's invented one of the biggest blockchain concept in the world. And one of my best friends who focused on AI ethics is coming from the Africa. So they believe that these countries are underdeveloped. So we need to use something simple here. But when we create the hackathons on the Middle East, in most cases, people here don't want to copycat stuff from America. They don't care. They have a knowledge. And if they have some tools, we would love to build blockchain. They would love to build robots, even if they have no economy. It's a kind of an interesting phenomena we have in very different countries of the world. So we would love to jump through several levels. We don't want to go one, something simple. After what we maybe build Uber, after that Facebook, after that robots. No, they say we have a mathematics universities, we have a knowledge in AI. Please give us the tools, and we would love to build a robots or space technology. And that's why, for instance, now such hubs in Nigeria are able to produce more innovation than some American states. But due to the politics on venture capital, it never happened because even if there are many very talented people who focus on AI, machine learning, these ideas will never be invested because nobody would love to see competition on this market, specifically if they need less money in order to build much more companies. But because one of the biggest problems of the United States is inability to support actual innovation because it's very expensive. Because so many companies, so much competition, so much investments in real estate, everything is very expensive. So you're not able to build actual innovation. So you build some kind of simulacra of technology, another Snapchat, another Facebook, something simple, and something not long-term without actual impact. So, and in terms of the man, as I've mentioned, I'm not really experienced in this. I started to support myself and my family despite of disability when I was 13, and I never had idea why people spend so much time in order to create the support from society. I mean, if you're able to get an apprenticeship or get some jobs, just do it. I mean, I believe people are very sensitive in the Western world. And the question of Dixon, why male are focused on money? I believe they are weak. I mean, one of the things I explored in science and specifically in biology, the male are driven by Y chromosome. So it's something that actually drives the difference in society. So most of the talented people I see never try to spend their time in order to create the wealth because it's useless. Wealth actually doesn't produce any kind of change in terms of evolution. Most of the talented people I know invest in actual technology, in science and research. Other people who are not very talented create simulacra. They invest maybe in e-commerce and something like that, which why, for instance, as I mentioned before during the panel on the Middle East, we have one of the highest percent of women in the Middle East technology because most of the women going into the deep tech, into the AI, chemistry, physics, because sometimes not very strong men, just afraid this hard work. Males are not strong anymore. What's a part of a problem? That's why they're looking for money because it's easier. The real work is very hard. Long-term investment is a very hard. Science is a very hard. Financial markets is a very easy. And that's why, in as a more addition to the question of Ulrike, we actually define not by economic agenda, but very artificial, infantile world of stuff we don't need. That's why we have a 90% of startups which die. 90% of startups actually are not crucial for the world. It's useless. Just another type of a products, but it failed. Billions of dollars spent without any kind of result. And it just became an industry. It has no any relation to technology and innovation. So, but in order to fix it, we need to go from the bottom up, involve everyone. We should have a relevant representation. And males should be strong, not create some kind of simulacra, but actually work hard, invest in long-term projects, and improve themselves, not just creation some kind of a representation for their portfolios.
Thank you, Yonah. And really, I love this global perspective that you bring in because I think in Germany we are very much in our bubble. Maybe you in the US as well. But I would like to give Ulrike the chance to put her comment.
Yeah, only a short one now. I just wanted to point to the fact that when we are thinking about, for instance, immigration, I didn't like it at all that every time we see the pictures that we only see these young men who are pushing the woman to the side and walking over the children. I'm just saying in pictures, you know. And in the end, when they come to Germany, then we have the men here. And I have a little bit, I would like to hear more because our theme today is women in tech. I would like to ask the question we have in Asia. I also have them as students a lot in Germany. I can only tell them from my side of the point. I am from Germany. That's why I nowadays see it, of course, more from Germany. But I see the young girls also from Asia. I see them from Russia. We have wonderful artists also from Russia. I had time being now in Corona, a young master student, female living at my place. And I can only say I would like to encourage the continents like Africa. I only see the men again coming, and they are often not only coming here to work, they are also sometimes also giving a bad image, I must say a lot. And that's why I would love to encourage these young women. And I'm asking myself, how can we help these wonderful talents now over the barrier free digital access, just like you said, Sunny. I took it up again. I love your words. And this accessibility that we can use it for the young women. But the women in Africa and as many countries, they have so many children to care for and they don't come to education. They are the last ones who get the accessibility. That's why, what can we do there? Just to put that now also to a statement, because then they can do all these wonderful things what Yonah was talking about. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ulrike. And that brings us back because remember that it was important for Gisha so that we really think in terms of what can we do, what needs to be done. The idea is, how can we put this together after we understood a little more the complexity of the topic. Ulrike, is that you again? No. Is your hand still up?
Sorry, it's still up. My hand, I must put it down again. Thanks, sorry.
And the question of accessibility, how can we use the new media approach that we, through COVID, we have all, learned a lot about how to connect differently. Any ideas on that?
Well, I might jump in to address some of the, number one, I wanted to give an update of what's happening in the United States, especially in terms of the global landscape. There's a white paper called The Emergence of Global Heartland. It's actually looking at the data of immigration trend in the United States. Because traditionally you would assume their immigrants are on both coastal area, East Coast, West Coast, New York, Boston, and then LA, San Francisco. Guess what? Most recently, we're seeing more and more immigrants coming to the heartland of the United States. In other words, in places like Ohio, Indiana, Texas, for example, these are actually becoming more like a rapid growth if you look at immigrant population. And there are a few implications about this. Number one, we all know, this goes back to Dixon's topic of migration too. Immigrants actually contribute a lot in innovation and in economy. If you look at the number of patent, the number of unicorn founders, 55% of unicorn founders are immigrants, and 40 plus Fortune 500 companies are founded by immigrants and their kids. So essentially, globally, they make a huge impact. So this means American Heartland is going to be the next wave, in addition to what we were seeing previously from the Silicon Valley and from the East Coast. And the good news about this, Yonah, is we, in Heartland, the problems people are focused on are more substantial. These are like, agriculture, education. I mean, things that is actually close to our real lives, rather than the cute kind of, apps we're seeing out of the Silicon Valley area, where, you see investors looking at sexy and hot topics. No, like Heartland problems are actually very different from those more developed hubs. So that's something I felt like it's worth paying attention. And number two, in terms of, I think, Ulrike, you also asked the question about the early stage venture building, and Yonah touched on it too, in terms of venture capitalists. There's also good news and bad news. Number one, you're absolutely right. Venture capital has been such a dinosaur industry, although it's investing in technology, but it's actually not evolving as technology and as society evolve. But the good news is there are actually more and more emerging managers that comes from non-traditional backgrounds. They are not bankers and Wall Street kind of background. They're actually coming from subject domain experts. In fact, Barbara, you shared what we did at Z-Lab previously, but our most recent focus as a venture studio is to invest and also co-build tech startups, especially focusing on women, minority, and immigrants. And that means we're actually investing all four capitals. Number one is is intellectual capital, which is the know-how, the knowledge, the learning, the expertise, and the skills. Going back to Dixon's question about education, so there's that intellectual capital we need to invest in women, and then the second one is human capital, which means you need the kind of talents to support them. Like usually one single founder can only go, this far, but they need a team of talents, and they have to go outside their own little circle to get those talents. The next one is social capital, which is connections and resources. Barbara, this is one of the reasons that we don't see women, because they're unable to make it to the table, which is the reason, only 2.3 venture capital goes to women founder. It's so depressing. But I felt like, yeah, on the one hand, it's about how much money you're allocating to women founders. But I actually think a bigger question is like, how many of them actually made it to the table? Because it's just such a long way from early stage to venture capital, where, you know, if you're not connected, if you are not born in a private school kind of community where, you know, every other person had a silver spoon by birth, like you're just not, you don't have that friend and family circle which would, you know, get you step by step to the VC table. And the last one is social capital. In other words, you know, when we're investing, we're thinking it has to be all it takes. Otherwise, if you're only giving money alone, it's not going to work. We've also seen some microfinancing experiments in some of the emerging economies. Like you're just distributing money because of their habit and because of their, you know, patterns. It's not going to go very far. So you really need to, you know, to answer your question, Barbara, I felt like we need to have more holistic support for women so that when they're here, and of course, Houston, for example, where we are, it is the #1 diverse city of the United States. In fact, there's no ethnic majority here. You may be surprised to find out. And 1 in 4 residents in Houston are foreign born. So, you know, and it's really, really diverse from everywhere. Not only, I think, Wilbur, you're gonna like what you're seeing in Houston. It's really people from all over the world getting together. But what's lacking is there's a lot of bilateral relationship, let's say between Nigeria and US, between Indonesia and US. But there's not a lot of multilateral, and that's what we're working on. You know, essentially, when they come to Germany from another country, how can they not only connect with Germany, but also people from other countries? If I use this as a mirror image, which is, you know, my answer to the question of how do we interconnect, because we have to go beyond this bilateral to like multilateral, which is really how decentralized network bring more value to the community.
Thank you very much, Sunny. And this is really taking the holistic approach and really look at the 4 of them. And I would like to continue with that in the next breakout session to elaborate on that a little more deeply. How exactly could we do it, or to give idea to sort of think about it more intensely. Yes, I would say let's have a break here, because the next session will start at 6 o'clock.
So, Barbara, may I interrupt you for a minute? Because Martin, I just heard that he won't make it until 18. So we maybe we take another 5 to 10 minutes for another question.
Oh. Okay. Sorry, I didn't see that Slack.
Yeah.
Okay. Because then I would.
Barbara, can I make one comment to religious things? Do you think in your aspects, if you come from other countries and other continents, is that an aspect that we can say that that what can we do that it isn't a religious or a woman part, that we have to stay at home and we're not allowed to be educated and so on? I have a few things in my head about Afghanistan when we were looking at these terrible stories now, that the women are again cut off from education and so on. So can you maybe, is there someone who can contribute to that part of the story? Dixon, do you know something to tell us about that?
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I just maybe I can do that when we return, because I understood that Marcus will not be joining us again, or I don't know.
Okay, now we have a parallel breakout session, and Martin is facilitating this parallel breakout session.
Okay.
And at 6 o'clock, all the participants who are involved are free to move from one breakout room to the other.
Okay.
So that you can join Annie and Gita and and Karambu
yes.
on their discussion.
Yes,
and join in there.
I got
and then
it.
other people will come in here.
Yeah, I got it. So now you asked about Africa and Afghanistan. It's actually, there's a question you talked about women having many babies and they have no opportunity to go to school. Yes, I agree with you. And this is why I started an organization called Solidarity International Trust. And one of the things we emphasize is that if you join us, if you join because the organization is actually formed by women groups. We now have more than 300, and that's about 6,000 women. And so one of the rules is that you've got to educate your children. That's one of the things that they must do. And we even have a kitty within the microcredit that helps them do that. Secondly, if they want to return to school, they also they have access to that kitty. So yes, that one is very important because we realize when they have knowledge, the formal knowledge, then it helps them or it exposes them to something else, like they would want even to travel, for example. They would want to learn more about other cultures. So yes, for us, we are doing that. Now, going back to Afghanistan, I think Afghanistan is a very unique country right now, because first, the world is yet to acknowledge the government that is there at the moment, because it doesn't follow any human rights principles. So I don't think we should actually be talking about this, because at the end of the day, people who have tasted democracy and human rights, they're going actually to go against this regime. I can tell you. I don't think people will just sit back and see what they really hoped to have being taken away from them. So I think for women, I've seen even women now starting to go to school, and the Taliban is not able to say anything because they're afraid, because of the pressure they're getting from the international community. So my guess is they will really have to modernize. Sorry, the Taliban, they have to do it, because people will not sit back and see what they know is their right taken away from them. But I would want, if we can be able to assist those women, even by way of moral support. We have technology now. Let's try to do it. Even from this conference, we can identify people that we can just, urge them on, let them know that we support them. That really helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Dixon. You're referring to what this conference could do. How exactly can I imagine this?
Yeah, what I mean is, I'll give an example. When I was working with refugees, one of the things that used to happen is most refugees, the moment they lose hope, believe me, that's the end. Yeah. And I know at this moment, people in Afghanistan, they really are about to lose hope. So what I mean is we can come up within the technology, have partners, at least for us to be having a conversation with them. And even if it's offering online, I don't know about the online, because I don't know what Taliban is doing about technology, because they are so much afraid of things getting out, But I think we can possibly have a committee that has an interest to see how we can have that engagement, that connection with the women in Afghanistan, just to first give them hope.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Now have a concrete picture in my mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes this is that somebody cares, that just having a conversation or just showing up and showing my interest helps. Yes, thank you. Oh my God. Thank you very much, and for all these remarks and ideas that are now in my head. And I think let's take 10 minutes break, and we meet again at 6:10. Is that okay? Okay. And if we don't see you because you've moved on to the other room, have a nice evening. And see you, Sunny and Yonah, see you in 10 minutes. Hello, and how do I pronounce that name? Yaluvu?
Jalu, yeah.
Jalu.
Mm-hmm.
Jalu, hello, welcome. And Ina.
I pronounced correctly. I think Yalu was asked like 3 times in the last one.
Jalu, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm getting better.
Sunny is informed that she has to use the same link again. So I think she will come in a minute.
Okay, so we wait for a moment.
Maybe just a short introduction first.
But wait for Sunny or for a moment. Give her another minute. Because it was important for Sunny also to have a introduction to the people.
Mm-hmm.
So
I just sent her a note that she should use the same link.
Okay. Thank you.
Ah, there she is.
Oh, in the car.
In the car again. So she will be able to listen.
Okay, Sunny, can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you guys, but I'm in transit, so I'll be listening in and jump in whenever you need me. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. We'll just make another introductory round because we have 2 new faces, Jalu, and Ina.
Yeah.
And I think also you don't know Christine and me as well. Neither, no? Okay. You know Christine? Okay, no.
So it was a yes to we don't know you yet.
Okay. Then Ina, maybe you would like to start? Make a short introduction.
I don't know what you want to know. I'm Ina. I'm totally into organizational design and development and creating fearless organizations. And I'm really happy that we have this conference with the topic Women in Tech. I don't know what you want to know more, but maybe it's enough already.
Fearless organizations. Oh, I love that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Jalu?
Hello, everyone. It's Jalu from Shanghai, China. I work in dance and theater and performance, and recently I just got involved in a documentary project about prehistorical human beings in China. So, yeah, I just love the journey that art throws me on. I feel it's full of all the new discoveries and, and the learnings.
Thank you. Christine?
Thank you, Barbara. Great to hear, Yalu, because I think it's late at night already in China, right?
Yeah, it's 1:15.
Wow. Great you're here. So I'm Christine. I'm working as in form of a right hand of Gitta in organizing these conferences and in her education journeys. On the other hand, I'm an executive search consultant and facilitator and try to bring more consciousness in business. And I'm here because I already joined the session before here, but I still have another question that I want to put to Sunny and Yonah before I'd love to move to the other session. So may I?
Go ahead. Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah, great. I already posted to the chat, but it's really a concrete question. When I listened to the keynote thoughts of Sunny and Gita, I heard about bringing together tech and the caring energy of women. So my question is, I've heard people say that only technical invention, which we are not thinking of yet, can stop the climate catastrophe. People won't change their behavior fast enough, and politicians still focus on other things more. So, do you know of any initiatives or concrete projects by women or other underestimated innovators in this direction, which are already take place and maybe which we can support?
Yeah, this is a direct question from Christine, and whoever wants to start, Yonah or Sunny.
Yonah, I would say you take this one.
Wonderful. First of all, climate change is one of the topics we constantly see across all of the hackathons, no matter in Europe, in US, or Middle East. And women are constantly involved in this topic. So is a AI for climate change research, is a decentralized project, is investment in circular energy, solar energy. There are a lot of projects. Feel free to ping me anytime. I mean, there are many projects actually. In my strong belief, the problem is not in technology. I mean, there is just recently we had another fund which invests in climate technology in Europe. Is a $500 million fund. Is the biggest European fund in this direction, and there is a lot of technology. The problem is really about behavior. It's really about it's more like a social problem. It's a very similar to the situation we have AI and robotics. Everything is about bias. It's not about bias of algorithms, because in the end, just lines of code and nothing else. But the bias is a combination of a lack of representation, a lack of a culture, lack of a connection between technology and social science, gender studies, ethnical studies, demographics, and so on. And something similar we have it in climate change. There are a lot of projects, but we need a better clarity in terms of how it's implemented, how people are involved, and how, more importantly, how people behave and how they become, let's say, we have a concept of digital citizen where people are conscious and they understand, for instance, how to use internet, how to use computers and technology, or how to keep their data privacy. Now we need climate citizen. So now we need just to teach people how to be climate citizen. And it's another task, but once again, we have enough of technology startups, early stage, not early stage, ventures initiative is fairly enough.
So if I may add to Yuna's comment, especially coming from Houston, if you guys are not aware, we are the energy capital of the world, which was 1.0 oil and gas. We're in transition to 2.0, which is clean energy. And I'm so excited to share with you guys that a lot of the accelerators and incubators actually have women leaders right here in Houston, which is really, really exciting. And at our venture studio, and we're also establishing a fund of $20 million, specifically investing in women, minority, and immigrant founders, addressing climate change and energy transition, of course, the future of learning as well. So essentially, these are the active efforts we're keep pushing. And I really believe that, as Yuna said earlier, when it comes to technology, we're not only pushing technology for women, but also by women. For example, there are lots of startups that are working on clean skincare. Since we have a lot of ladies here, skincare that doesn't have harmful chemicals, but all green ingredients. I mean, clean ingredients, and also a lot of organic food. However, they're facing the challenge of packaging because although the product itself are green, but the packaging are still a challenge. So one of our pipeline startup is using blockchain and artificial intelligence to ensure the whole supply chain of packaging, all the way from design to product engineering to manufacturing to delivery is all sustainable. So those are some examples of what we're working on and the involvement of women leaders in the space. So I really hope everybody gets to visit us. We're actually hosting Born Global 2022 during Houston Tech Rodeo in the beginning of March. So, if COVID is behind us, you guys can travel. I'd love to host you all and show you around and connect you with all the women leaders in the climate and energy transition space.
Thank you. So, as far as I understand, Christine, it's not what you expected, probably.
It was very interesting.
There's no super technology that can save us, but there are many, many things that are already there, and just the willingness of people to really take action. And also, I think again and again is to, like what Sunny said always, to interconnect all these initiatives and these projects and to make them more public and educate people. I like this idea, educating people into climate citizens.
Mhm.
And I think it's sort of really it's root work.
Mm.
I'm just wondering, I went to a summit for vegan women, basically, who also shared what they built, what they founded. It was really interesting also to discuss with them about what we can actually do to, and I really like the word climate citizens as well, to leave a better world, basically. So I was wondering what you think is the most successful path we can take at the moment, like what we can actually do to become climate citizens and be role models, basically. Is there one path you say is best, or you say is most successful for you?
Yes, I would love to answer it. First of all, I would follow the route we use for a digital citizen case. So, what, for instance, I use for my work, neurodiversity. I explored that in order to solve the issue of exclusion of autistic people, we really need to connect all of the dots in research, technology, policy. So I explored what we need to literally go to every school, every campus in order to teach people to design technologies, products, solutions, classrooms for neurodivergent individuals. After that, I literally go to the policymakers with suggestions to the policies, and literally send emails and letters to 5 different commissions and institutions related to European Commission in order to update Accessibility Strategy 2030 in terms of adoption of this technology, not only on bottom level, but on the high level. We literally organize hackathons for accessibility in order to involve more people. I literally work for a European Commission in order to identify emerging research in this work. And we created the working group in London, and where we connect all of the dots, where I provide the report how we connect all of these dots. So in terms of terms of a climate citizen, it's a very similar. I mean, we literally need to do all of this work. Go to the schools, go to the campuses, universities, accelerators, venture capitalists, policymakers, and after that, connect all of the dots for working groups, for people who are really passionate about it. And one of them, let's say, challenges I explore here, it's actually creating very smart and very intersectional groups who are responsible for connecting these dots. Because in most cases, is about connecting very different skills: technical, scientific, social science, and there's something similar in climate change. But yes, we really made a huge journey just in 3 years, for instance, for neurodiversity. And nothing were funded in this field, and now even small startups get the funding. We have movies on Netflix, so it's become a part of the mainstream. We create programs at schools and so on. So typically, 3, 5, 6, 7 years, going to every school, to every campus, and it starts to work gradually. And for sure, you need to ping policymakers directly as well.
That's
Yeah,
a
so
huge project. Awesome. It's really awesome.
That's right. So if I may add to it, because I actually want to get back to what you are working on, which is fearless organization, right? And the trend is to change from the hierarchical, like top down, to decentralized organization where everybody can make their contribution, not just like waiting for your authorities and managers. So in that spirit, to extend what Yonah was sharing about going into the education system, and I'm speaking as a business professor with 17 years of teaching experience, I'm actually taking the students outside the classrooms. I'm actually taking the students to the businesses and to the communities, because we have to remove the wall between education and the real society. So in that spirit, I actually would say the approach, I would love to see a more decentralized approach rather than top-down approach where everyone can be educating everyone else. Just imagine, from a social network perspective, we pick up behavior from the people in our network. So, how do we make vegan or make a green lifestyle into a pandemic? Like, how can we convert that and make that viral and contaminate everyone around us in a positive way, right? So, in other words, it goes back. I think we also touched on, in the keynote part, which is we don't need to wait for someone on top to tell us. Actually, I felt like everyone can be amplifying every little message, because climate crisis, although it's a huge issue, it actually starts from literally right now and from every individual. So if we could just share the sustainable practice in our daily life, and just share the message with the person next to us, share the message with the neighborhood, with the moms that we see at the bus stops, for example. I felt like that's really when we see this going viral and turning every citizen into a climate citizen.
I love that. Yeah. And it's now that what you see is you have so much power boosting around you, and it's so important just to invite everybody in. So just talk about it, make it your topic. Yeah, let it really spread, and it's at the most basic level as well. Yeah. And it's really, to be aware and to be conscious about, what am I spreading in my with my friends, with my colleagues, with wherever I go, wherever I am, what am I holding my hands out for? Yeah, I love that, because it gives you an idea that things can be moved and things can be done. Sunny, I do have a question. When you said, we need this holistic approach and the holistic support to empower women more into business. And I really love that you said doing good and making money is not a contradiction. Yeah, because I think at least in Europe, maybe sometimes we feel like making too much money is it's not a nice thing. But making money also gives you a lot of power and influence. So in that way, I really think that's important to highlight again. But when you say you have this, you have money, intellectual capital, human capital, and social capital, and how do you do this in your company, in the Z Lab? How exactly does it work? Now you are in the office.
Yeah.
It's amazing, right? When we see these speaking events, we see people in camera, but in reality, we're like switching locations. I think Barbara, Kristen, you've seen me everywhere. And previously, I was actually in the waiting room of my piano teacher. So literally, we're living the challenge we're all facing, right? As women in tech. So in our company, like actually I'm switching switching side. So LAB stands for linking academia with business. Z stands for the last letter of the alphabet. So it's underrepresented, underserved, just like women, minority, immigrants, and all the communities that we care about. So for us, we are really investing in impact-driven startups. So first of all, it is a venture capital fund. So by definition, it has to be a scalable business that's going to make a greater impact. But we use Sustainable Development Goals, United Nations 17 goals, as our investment thesis to see if the startup actually is serving. Usually a startup is not just addressing one goal. Like usually, if you see a female founder working on greener packaging, for example, or sustainable e-commerce, they're actually addressing multiple goals, from gender equity to education to partnership to poverty. Like essentially, we're actually seeing this more comprehensive way. And the reason we believe in both impact and in profit is because investing in women is not charity. Investing in women is not just like, okay, let's make the table more colorful, or investing in minority immigrants. It's not just making the table look good. It's actually growing a bigger pie for both sides of the table, for the venture capitalists, for the GPs, LPs, the shareholders, but also for the stakeholders, which are the founders and their employees, but also the community they serve. So we really believe in this holistic approach where we're bringing diversity to venture capital, not just for the sake of, okay, there's a number 2.2 venture capitalist fund goes to a female founder, let's increase that number. It's really not for the sake of the look. I actually feel like it's great we have awareness, but we have to move that awareness from just the look of the table, how we are as gender and all kinds of dimensions, to really the fundamental, what drives innovation, what adds value to the society. And actually it's the way of thinking, the way we are women, we're adding value, not because our biological gender, it's because we're actually seeing problems that the male dominated VC world was missing previously. Yonah mentioned earlier, for example, the entire healthcare system, like all the drugs we're taking, all the medicine we're taking, that's based on, 150-pound male. Like, it's actually very few women sample. Like, we're actually contributing because we are the users. We are also, the decision makers when it comes to making purchase, right? So we're really, making our share. By the way, guys, do you feel like whenever you're in the building, like a professional corporate building, you feel like freezing cold? Do you feel like, I'm asking all of the women, because those buildings are designed in the 60s and 70s when male were the dominating workforce. So that's why whenever we have, meetings in boardrooms, we feel like freezing cold. The women are feeling freezing cold because the whole infrastructure, and I want you guys to think the infrastructure not only in terms of architecture, but the entire society were designed when the males were the dominating force. So that's the reason, Barbara, we started as an digital innovation consultancy, but then we evolved into a venture studio. We're actually building startups as institutional co-founders, investing all for capital, and we're adding this fund because we just feel like we need to bring everyone to the table. We have to be on both sides of the table to make it happen. Not only encouraging more women scientists, engineers, data, AI specialists, bring them on board as entrepreneurs, applying the technology to solve real world problems. We also need more women LPs, women GPs on the venture capital side. Like, we need to bring everyone at the same table. And that's also the reason, in addition to our own venture studio, our own portfolio company, we started this Born Global initiative as our community effort, where even if you're not in our portfolio, you could be part of this. We're sharing our resources, sharing our learnings to pay it forward and to onboard more diverse and more women entrepreneurs, but also investors. That's something I want to touch on before I end this part. we need more women investors too, because if you guys look at the percentage, let's not only just lack of GPs in venture capital firms, but also the lack of angels, women angels. Do you know that for men, high net worth, once they are accomplished in their career, they start to invest. Like about 40-50% of men are actually involved in angel investing, but women, we're not. We're still in real estate and all the traditional side. Like I that's something we're working on too, to raise in public while raising awareness and making investment accessible, like democratizing financing, also investment, because with the new crowd funding and also retail investing and angel syndicate, everyone can be involved. You don't have to be a billionaire or millionaire. Like you can be a working professional and putting $1,000 here and there. Like you could be part of the change we want to see. And there are so many ways to be involved, because people feel like, oh, we're talking about technology, we're talking about entrepreneurship and innovation, you have to be a founder. No, there are so many roles, and we need to involve women in not only becoming just a founder, but even just being a cheerleader, being a advocate, being a spokesperson, being a mentor, being advisor, being a researcher, and just like sharing. What do you say? There's also what's the word? I'm lost in words, but there are some. It takes a village, and we just need to involve more women in that village. You don't have to be a founder. You don't have to be a VC to be involved.
Just to be, on practical terms, how does it work? I mean, do you have people in person coming together in crowds, and you organize like workshops or bigger hackathons or whatever you might call it? Is it online? Is it person? And I suppose you just walk around Houston and ask people personally, would you like to join? Because this is an important project and we need you. Is that how you do it?
We have been actually more active in the digital space, especially during COVID. So I guess one day I'll be on the street more often. But as Yonah mentioned, some of our effort is in partnership with nonprofit organizations such as Women in AI and others. So we helped the organization design and implement the inaugural Y Accelerate program, which was a 6-month long program, literally bringing female entrepreneurs from ideation to validation to design to develop their AI and machine learning and data science powered impact-driven startups addressing United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So that's one of the efforts, which also, hackathon, where Yonah and I collaborated as part of that startup development program as a weekend effort, as we have this ongoing. And then next year, we're actually going to launch a more comprehensive, because you can't just address this part of the entrepreneurship. We need the entire pipeline from the education. So we're actually going to launch a more comprehensive framework, including why educate, which is to share knowledge about AI, machine learning, and data science. And then from that, we'll get to why incubate, which is from the ideation and the validation. And then once they're more advanced, they'll get to why accelerate. And then, we'll have VCs and other partners coming in and making the investment. So that's our activity as example at Women in AI. And over here, we started in Houston, the Born Global initiative. This is probably last session, right? So it's part of Houston Tech Rodeo as we started it. But after that, by the way, we run a 12-hour program from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. For example, Jialu, we actually have 8 a.m. for APEC, focusing on Asia, Pacific, and then moving to MENA, which is Middle East, North Africa, and then covering Africa, and then followed by Europe, Latin America, North America, and in between we had investor networking, speed networking. We had We had startup showcase. We had ecosystem roundtable. Essentially, it was a 12-hour program. It was so well received. People feel like this is so much needed. Let's bring the whole world together. And then after that, Barbara, we've been hosting weekly educational webinars. So it's all online. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you're going to see we have venture capitalists talking about building company as immigrant founders, for example. We're talking about what's wrong with venture capital. We're talking about, how we can help energy transition kind of founders take off, help their startup take off, collaborating with all of our, ecosystem partners such as Global Energy Mentors and different consulates, different chambers of different world. By the way, we have 90 plus consulates represented in Houston, and 140 plus languages spoken here. So it's like really, really, there's a reason we launched it here, but this community has been growing internationally, and I definitely would love to share that with everybody, encourage you to be part of this. So essentially, we're starting to see two tracks. One is for founders. We're providing all these educational webinars, but also we will be launching incubators, accelerator as their international launchpad for both the immigrants in the United States, but also for international founders to bring their companies here and launch it globally. This Born Global is actually a business concept about, rather than starting a mom and pop shop, going local, national, and then international, you can have a Born Global startup from day one, day zero, with that kind of strategy. So essentially, there's the immigrants in the United States, but there's also international innovators. We want to bring their startups to the United States because this can be their international launchpad by going global. And then the other track, Barbara, is a syndicate where we just want to make investment more accessible for anyone. Like, regardless of who you are, we want you to be part of this. When we see mission-driven, purpose-driven, impact-driven startups by immigrant founder, by international founders, you can be part of this change. Even if you're not a founder yourself, you can invest. And you don't have to be a venture capitalist. You could be a dentist. You can be a professor like myself. You can be a real estate agent. You can be engineer. You can be an actor, athlete. Anybody could get involved. So Jialu, I'd love to learn more about the performing art and the initiative you have, and Ina too. But continue collaborating with you both, Barbara and Kristen, because it is really a global effort to make the change we want to see.
So I really love that idea to be really thinking globally right from the beginning. Because
Exactly.
I think in Germany, we have a very, very closed perspective. This is really just awful. And we have something very similar also done by a university professor, and it's called the Entrepreneurship Summit.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it similarly to what they provide education and connections, and once a year people can present their ideas and their how they scaled it and how they became profitable, and you can learn from it. But it's Germany, Berlin.
Exactly.
But it's a start. It's a start.
Right. And Barbara, with all the discussion items we are talking about, the climate change, for example, and poverty, gender equality, these are all global issues. These are not local issues. And we actually need diverse perspectives. We need to bring all the different minds together. And that's why, when I talk about, bring different people to the table, it's not just make it look colorful and look good. It's really what's behind the way of thinking that drives innovation and drives, the value we're adding. So I'd love to. I'm really glad, Barbara, you asked, what are the specific things we could do together, right? So these are our humble efforts, and we definitely want to make it available to everyone. And in the spirit of Yonah, we continue our zero exclusion, but we also have radical transparency and universal accessibility in our slogan for Born Global, in addition to zero exclusion, because we want everyone to be engaged and we don't even have membership because we felt like whenever, wherever you can just jump in and join the discussion.
This is the next question that I had on my mind. If somebody is interested to go in more deeply, how do I get to Gone Global?
So I will share in the chat, and I'll also share with Gita my own LinkedIn. Of course, you can follow the upcoming activities, but we also have a LinkedIn. Sorry, we also have a LinkedIn group, but also a most active Slack space and a WhatsApp, depending on what you're feeling most comfortable. So far, Slack has been most active, and I also wanted to shout out for Yonah. He also started Zero Exclusion Slack. So I felt like these are all ways for us to continue our discussion after the hour ends, because there's so much more we need to work on together.
And if I just Google the Zero Exclusion, and then Slack will sort of show up, or how does it work?
So we're gonna share invitation in the chat. So
okay.
I'm pulling it up right now. Thanks.
And also this global women in AI. What is that what kind of organization is this?
So Women in AI is a global nonprofit organization, first initiated in Paris. So the headquarters is actually in Europe, and I'm serving as a program advisor for the USA chapter, essentially. Because whenever you bring something to another country, you really have to localize it. You rarely can just, like selling a product. Even selling a product, you need to. I mean, I teach global marketing, international business. You can't really replicate. So when you work in another country, although we're talking about global, but local, you have to localize it, which is why we pretty much designed it from scratch. Although the branding, although the branding and the slogan are consistent with the Europe chapter, headquarter, we literally designed Y Accelerate program and Y Hackathon, with the US chapter, but then also extending to other chapters. Like Yonah continued working with APAC, for example. I'm also going to share the link in the chat, so you could take a look at this nonprofit organization. And we have major presence in Germany, actually, Barbara. I'll be happy to connect you guys to the Germany chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Yonah, do you want to also share invitation to Zero Exclusion? So I'm sharing. This is Born Global Slack space. Jialu, are you able to use Slack from China since you have international engagement? I'm assuming you'll be able to get around the wall.
I got my VPN on, although sometimes it's not so stable. Yeah, I can't. Wait. Oh, let me try.
But at least you could connect on LinkedIn. I mean, the reason I'm active on LinkedIn is actually the global access, because so far, unfortunately, this is the only social media that's available all over the world. Everything else has been so divided. There's major censorship, not only in China, lots of other countries as well. So, LinkedIn so far has been, I felt like, the positive social network comparing with a lot of others that is full of fake news and false information. Like so far, it has been, quite professional in terms of amplifying messaging. So please feel free to connect with both Yonah and myself and share your profile so we can connect with each other.
Exactly. You remember that you can share your profile on the Padlet link. So you find this in the backstage session. There is a link to the Padlet, and you can fill in your contact dates and a photo of you, so we remember you, and share your personal data so that it's easier for us, for everybody to interconnect.
Yeah, just put the link to the Padlet in the chat as well. So especially for Ina and Yalu, we can stay in contact if you join this with a few words and a contact address.
Sure, will do.
Great.
Now, thank you. Now this has become quite hands-on now, which is really nice. And yeah, because sometimes people just don't have the fantasy how it could really actually work. And maybe you have another question. You can ask Yonah or Sunny about the work they're doing or anything else.
Yeah,
I
I
had
actually want to.
Go
Oh,
for it. Go for
ahead.
it. No, you first. I already had my
Yeah.
turn.
So I just want to ask you because actually it's my first time to hear about neurodiversity, but I think it does kind of like a ring a bell, make sense for me. And I'm just curious, like, could you please give an example, like an introductory example to illustrate what kind of what kind of like a policy suggestions that you're making with regards to this promoting the neurodiversity? Thank you.
Yes, first of all, you can find two recent documents. They're pretty huge, which I publish in open source. You can find it in my profile and my site. So first of all, there are several levels of neurodiversity. On one hand, is a system of perception. That's how neurodiverse people communicate, think, feel, systemize, communicate, and so on. At the same time, there are social levels, gender, comorbidity, social economics elements. So basically, on one hand, I provide suggestion focused on the research, how exactly we research people with a neurodivergent spectrum. For instance, what's the minimal age when we're able to research the child for app or platform? So what's the minimal age from ethical perspective, when we need to approach child and when we need to approach caregiver? So it's a quite half medical, half social things and policy. It's very complicated. So on one hand, it's about children protection, human rights protection, UX UI research, how to properly ask questions, which elements of a spectrum you need to take into account, how to make this conversation safe, because, for instance, neurodivergent individuals prefer to communicate through the text, not through the video. So there are many things we need to take into account. And at our level, the first level is more for researchers and for developers, and another level is mostly for policymakers. Is an evaluation. I work for European Commission evaluating technology in artificial intelligence and blockchain. So it's a recommendation which ethics criteria we need to put along with the business impact and so on. So because until today, we were mostly focused on sustainability and general feasibility of the business, but not about data privacy, safety, well-being, children protection, and many elements. So other document is more about how we evaluate technology when we already build it. So one is about research, another is about evaluation. And another one I'm currently working on is focused on the vision of a technology is a modular system. So 1 year ago, I worked on AI for dyslexia in Denmark. Now we have a company's focus on AI for autism in Canada, in Europe. And now we try to create the vision of which element of a technology, how to close the gap of this technology in classrooms, workplaces, how to connect all of this technology, how to track them. For instance, we have one of the startups which works as a kind of Google Analytics, an analytical system for all of these robots, smart glasses. So how we should track all of this, how to make it in a safe way, how to involve all of the stakeholders, because neurodiversity is not about child, it's about parent, it's about counselor, it's about medical professionals, educators. So all of these elements I need to bring to the policymakers, because almost only thing we aware of is that neurodiverse people are not really good in communication. I mean, that's all. But they have no idea that there's 100 different symptoms behind it, including digestive system, endocrine system, different neurological symptoms, and so on. So all of this stuff I put into this frameworks, and I continue to update it. And actually, the zeroexclusion.org is an initiative which I launched as an open source wing of my work, because I've made all of this work in kind of centralized work completely alone, because it's a very sensitive topic. But now I'm trying to bring more and more researchers, evaluators, scientists, in order to bring more research perspective and representation in views, because there are such elements as intersectionality. For instance, there's different numbers related to autism in different communities. There are different patterns in different genders. And unfortunately, all of this stuff we have now are mostly designed for males and so on. So that's what we're trying to solve in these frameworks.
Wow, that sounds intriguing. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Never
see,
heard
this
of it.
is literally what I mean by it's not how we look, because when we talk about diversity, usually it's gender, ethnicity, and like those levels. But Yonah's work again is great exemplar of diversity goes way beyond the superficial level, but the way we think. So neurodiversity and cognitive diversity, from a psychology perspective, definitely are examples of diversity of way of thinking. And we need to incorporate that in the design of our infrastructure, which has been lacking, right? It's just been such a homogeneous design in the past.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. Our time now is running out. We are closely to 7 o'clock here, Central European time. And I would like to thank all the audience and everybody for participation and for this absolutely intriguing and interesting 2 hours. And I'm so happy, I'm so proud that I was the one who could facilitate this, because I've got so many inspirational things, just going on in my head. And it's, oh my God, all these things out there already happening. And it's so good to have this global perspective from all of you, and it's been really lovely. Thank you very much, and thank you to Ina and Jalou. Thank you for participating, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. And I will invite Sunny and Jonah for a short meeting together in the break. Okay, and Christian says, actually, I wanted to change the session, but I couldn't move away from your fascinating energy. Isn't that beautiful? This is the for Jonah and Sunny. For Jonah, sorry, Jonah slips into all terms. And Sunny, this is the link, the Zoom link for the panel that we will meet with the others, with Gita and Martin and the other panelists, for a short 10 minutes exchange. What was that for me? What do I take with me? And I would like to say thank you and goodbye to Ina and to Jalou. And Jalou, have a nice night. Few hours sleep.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Nice to
Thank you.
Bye.
Really
Bye
good.
bye, and see you shortly in the other panel.